Say that you have an application and you want to containerize it. The usual process will be to look for some template Docker files and compose files and then derive from that and build the Docker files for your own application. That involves like understanding what base image to use, what are all the environment variables you have to set and all those things. It will so happen that you may miss out on some of the best practices. Docker makes this process very easy by the introduction of the Docker init command. Let me show you how it works. There is a Flask based application. Flask is a micro web framework. I just instantiate the application and then have a default root which will return the hostname. Let's say that I want to containerize this application and I want to run it using the Gunicon web server. So I've also created a requirements.txt file with the two dependencies Flask and Gunicon. Let's say that now I want to containerize and deploy it. What I will do is I will say docker init. Docker will create these 4 files, and as you can see it is having support for these many platforms and it has automatically detected that I have a Python based application. Let us select that and then it asks me what version of Python I want to use. I will go with this default and it asks me on what port I want the server to listen to, so I will go with the default and this is the command I want to run. Name is the server. Once I press enter, you can see that it has created these 4 files: docker ignore, docker file, compose file and the readme file, and it also tells me how I should run the application. I just have to say docker compose up minus build, then it will run the application. Before we run the application, let's quickly go through each of the files that is generated. The first file is the docker ignore file, which is similar to a git ignore, which lists the files that should not be included in your container. You can see like all these different files you wouldn't want to include in your container. The next file is the docker file, which is used for building the container. So as you can see, it has selected a base image, the Python version, and also it has set up some environment variables related to the Python platform itself, and it has set some working directory for your application. And then you can see that it installs the packages mentioned in requirements file and then what port you want to expose and what command you want to run. As you can see, each of these commands also have detailed comments. You can go through them and understand what each of them does. The next file is the compose file. The docker compose file is useful when you want to run multi-container applications. In this case, we have only one container, which will be a Flask web server. But if you have, say, a database which the server interacts with, then they have given some setup on how to do it. If you say, for example, have a Postgres DB that the web server interacts with. And the last file is the readme file. Again, this is explaining like how you have to run the application. If you are wanting to deploy it on the cloud, I mean, you don't want to run it here, but you want to build the container and then push it to your Docker hub or your some other registry that you have. So then it explains how it has to be done. Now going to the demo, let's quickly try to run this application and see the demo. As mentioned, I set docker compose minus build. Build will build the container and also run the application. Now you can see that the container has been built and then now it's listening on this port. As we saw in the application, it just returns the hostname. Let's see whether that is the case. In this case, since it is running as part of the container, the hostname returned is the container ID. That was a quick demo of the docker init command. Thank you.